Aloha, everyone, and welcome to Live Front and Center. This is the podcast we do here for the Women's International Music Network, the live video podcast that we do. I'm your host, Mickey Angeline, welcoming back, dear friend to the Women Substantial You and She Rocks Awards. We can go over that later. The wonderful guitarist, composer, instructor, Gretchen Menn. Thank you so much, Gretchen, for taking time out today.
Oh my gosh, it's always a pleasure. Any excuse to chat with you, I'm in.
Oh, I love that. Now, so we agreed we would keep this as concise as possible because we can go off on tangents. In fact, we did before we went live. What I want to make sure we discuss today is you have so much happening from the end of this year to the start of 2024. So why don't we start first with, you have shows coming up because you are a guitarist with Zepparella. Explain with everybody what that is and what you do in that.
Zepparella is my really fun day job, and it's playing the music of Led Zeppelin with three of my favorite human beings. Clementine, the drummer who started the band, who's like one of my dearest friends. Well, all of them are. Anna Christina, the singer, and Holly West is the bass player. Wonderful people, wonderful musicians, and it's amazing that we just get to show up and play Zeppelin and go travel all over the place and have fun doing it.
It's been a minute since I've seen the whole group perform, but yeah, it is such a show. It's like anyone who's ever seen it knows that going again, even you can watch it again and again and you'll catch something different every time. But you are four elite, incredible musicians and artists. And just thrilling to watch. In fact, you've got some shows coming up here in California, because I'm up in Sacramento, and I think the closest one might be Petaluma. I've got to try and catch another show because you have a couple of new people since I've seen it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have so Anna, it was actually our original singer. So she's back, and then Holly West is our bass player. I guess they've both been back for about, my sense of time, I feel like COVID just became this weird time vortex. I think it's 4 or 5 years now. I don't remember exactly. Yeah.
COVID, it's like dog years. You're right.
Yeah.
I had Holly West at the last She Rocks because you both performed with Laura Clapp.
Right. It's because right before we were gonna play, like all award shows, like everything's still like best laid plans and still things at the last minute come up. Laura Whitmore had said, "Hey, can you do a Zeppelin song?" And I was literally leaving for rehearsal with my trio, and we were planning to play only original songs for the award show. And I was like, "Ooh, let me just see," because nobody's got time to learn anything. So we get there. My drummer happened to know rock and roll, but the bass player didn't even have time to listen to it, much less, underestimate Zeppelin at your own peril. It's all people are like, "Oh, it's just a blues," and I'm like, "Okay, play it, and don't screw up the changes during the guitar solo." But I was like, Holly West is going to be there, no problem. Like I wanted to say yes, and I was like, "Oh, we can do this," and then Holly gets a little moment too, so it worked out great.
Oh, it was amazing. I always love seeing you on stage, seeing Holly for the first time, and then hearing Laura belt out a rock song. It was one of the highlights of the She Rocks Awards this last year.
She was so good. She was so fantastic.
I had no idea she could sing that at that level. And I just love learning new things about our musician friends. Now with Zepparella, you've got, how long have you been with that band?
It was my second band, like more than 15 years. I mean, like literally I was still learning to play in bands. I think I had been in an AC/DC tribute band with Clementine like the year before. So I was literally brand new. I always credit Clementine for allowing me to have a gig for which I was utterly unqualified, but she knew I was going to work hard. So, yeah, I really grew up.
I can't ever picture you being unqualified of anything ever. So that's interesting.
I spent a lot of hours doing things that now feel like, really, why'd that take me so long? But even then it's like, there's always, it's that ever receding horizon of, improving.
So in guitar, because in researching you started at violin and went to guitar. Did I read that correctly?
Okay. I don't want to say you read it incorrectly. I smashed a violin, or I ruined a violin when I was very young. Yeah.
Okay.
My mom had a violin. And she was out one day, and my dad was very permissive and was like, "Oh, look at my daughter interested in musical instruments." And I remember dragging it around the house and playing it like a guitar. But apparently the violin was never the same after my afternoon with it.
And somewhere sparked the, I'm going to learn guitar. And you've graduated from college learning it. Now, a lot of people who know you, maybe some who don't, I know you mentioned in previous interviews that you've learned to become a pilot as a backup career in case music didn't work out. But I want to know, are you still flying to this day?
I'm not current, but I did just
Okay.
renew my flight instructor's license. Every 2 years, you got to go and take a test. So it's like I still have it. Like I always tell people that like if like the most terrifying thing happened and they were like, "Can anybody fly this plane?" I would do better than your average layman. Yeah, definitely. I could have
like
my
this
little.
because there you are. Here we are.
I could have my moment. It might not be a smooth landing, but I could probably,
I think I will always want to fly anywhere with Gretchen because if something happened, Gretchen can fly and save our lives. The end.
Yeah. And there might be damage to the plane. I mean, not if it's one that I've flown. I think I could get on the ground relatively okay, but every plane is very different. It doesn't just like, you drive a Toyota and now you can just drive like an Acura, no problem. Different sizes of planes, different systems. They're not necessarily as closely related. I mean, aerodynamics is aerodynamics, but a lot of the systems have a lot to do with the way a plane flies. So,
absolutely.
So it's been a minute. I wouldn't volunteer to take anybody up right now, but I definitely want to take some lessons and get some hours and get my landings in before going for it again.
I just love how diverse you are, especially in your styles in guitar, because you know everything from classical to rock. In fact, we mentioned how you have a second acoustic guide that's out now, and you're working on a new book. I think you said, correct, or new album?
Both actually. You're correct. Yes. So I have a book, like a proper book out. I mean, not an immense encyclopedic book, but a book with acoustic guitar called The Way Music Works. And they were so cool for letting me write about something that I'm passionate about, but I feel like is a hard sell to guitarists, which is basically just understanding kind of the language of music. People call it music theory, but I feel like that immediately makes people run around, like, run away, like being like, "Don't, I don't want to hear it." But my goal in all of this is to try to demystify something that I think is an immensely helpful thing for musicians to have at least a basic familiarity with. So the first book, The Way Music Works, is about that. Everything from memorizing the notes on your fretboard to being able to, come up with chord progressions and inversions and kind of understanding how things work. And then this latest thing that came out, the notation guide, is really about a guide for how to interact with written music, whether it's, understanding tablature or standard notation to things like repeats or codas or articulations and how those are written out, to try to give people the best shot at being able to actually look at music on a page and make sense of it with their playing.
Now, I wanted to show, we've got people in the chat room. Brianna, she loves that she just learned that you could fly.
Brianna,
which is on her bucket list. Happy belated birthday to you, Brianna, by the way. So then you have the books out. You've got a new album out. What's the name? Did you already have a name for the new album that you've got that you're working on currently?
Well, yeah, because my second album, it was actually I was thinking about doing a concept album anyway, just because I have this love of literature. And one of the things that I enjoy so much about instrumental music, which is what I do on my own, is that it leaves so much room for the imagination, but there's inherent limitations to that because a lot of times people like a story to be able to follow things. They like maybe a little bit more structure. And I thought maybe I could kind of combine this love I have of literature with instrumental music so that people could still have some sort of concept, but even if I'm still not going to sing or write lyrics. And so I've been toying around with like everything from Macbeth to like, different short stories. And then Michael Melenda, who at the time was at Guitar Player magazine, had heard my first album, I guess sensed a deeper compositional interest and asked me to discuss an idea he had. And frankly, I thought he was going to say like, here's why you need to sing and write more like, mainstream music, which is what I've heard from the beginning of playing guitar. And instead he had this whole document that said, like business proposition, like, Michael Melinda, Gretchen Menn, like, and it was Dante's Inferno, a journey in 11 musical moods. And I'm like,
Ooh.
yes, 100% yes. And I had so much fun doing the album. I did a lot of study of deepening my understanding of composition and studying everything from Kate Bush to Stravinsky, and different concept albums, and everything from like ballets of composed music to effective compositions, effective composing within concept albums. And I had so much fun doing it. And I had a little bit of that, like, like once you finish something big, that like, oh, it's done now. And then I'm like, wait a minute, it's the Divine Comedy. It's not just the Inferno. I've got Purgatory and Paradise. So I'm working on Purgatory right now. And I've got quite a bit, a decent amount recorded with string quartet. I'm adding woodwind trio to it as well. And I'm doing all sorts of stuff compositionally. It's like I can't just stay in a comfort zone. I'm like, oh, okay, what can I do now that's different and pushes my own limitations so I can do something new?
It sounds like you're always pushing yourself. And anytime I see anything pop up on social media with you, it's something I didn't expect you to do. I didn't know you could do. I live for your post, just so you know.
Oh, you're so sweet.
You have like the best really stuff going on, I swear. Oh. So then your career. So you've been playing for so many years, and we're going to come up on, because you've got a composing gig coming up, you mentioned, that's huge. Mm-hmm. Did you ever see yourself getting this far when you first started out? Because you mentioned earlier in this interview how Clementine took a chance with you because you felt you weren't quite there, and she knew you would work hard at it. So now you're about to compose, like work on composing piece. Did you ever see yourself at this far into your career?
I guess there's always twists and turns. I think, I guess what I'm glad about is I feel like I've had some really wonderful opportunities, and I'm so grateful for them. I am grateful that people, even for things that I felt utterly unqualified or unworthy to do, that people felt that my desire to do a good job was salient enough to take a risk on my inexperience. So my goal is always to see those opportunities and do my best to not disappoint, myself or anybody else who's given me an opportunity. So I am really excited about doing more stuff with that kind of combines electric guitar into a compositional context. That's something that I think goes back as far for me is really early on, when I got into like Eric Johnson and Joe Satriani and Steve Vai. My dad pointed me in the direction of Steve Morse, who's one of my enduring inspirations. And his band, the Dixie Dregs, and his solo music puts, even though they're rock or fusion or prog kind of leaning, they're very compositional in terms of how the instruments interact. And so I think from an early age, I got this idea that electric guitar wasn't meant just to, relegate everybody else to simple backing tracks, but was interesting to have interact with other instruments, So yeah, to have its good moments where it's front and center, but also, how does it sound in an accompaniment role to a violin, or, different, just different dynamics that can happen within different ensembles. So I'm really excited to be doing more of that.
Well, you probably covered the next question is do you have somebody you would love to collaborate with? And I'm guessing it would be
Steve Morse. Yeah. Well,
because your earlier stuff, you've done collabs and were guest on other work before. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering, is there was someone you haven't worked with yet you would love to work with?
Oh gosh, so many people I would love to work with. Well, right now I have to say that I am getting to do a bucket list collab thing. So Stephen Mackey, I mean, we talk about this interest into incorporating electric guitar into like serious composed music. So Stephen Mackey has been like one of the preeminent figures in that since like the 90s. And he's like an electric guitar player who's now a professor at Princeton and has won Kennedy Center honors and stuff for basically writing serious composed music and performing with symphonies all over the world, and often incorporating electric guitar into that. And he's writing a concerto for me, or he has written, and I am learning a concerto that he's written that I will be playing with the Utah Symphony. I say that and instantly my heart rate accelerates. That I will try not to screw up with the Utah Symphony in April of 2024, which sounds like a long way out, but the amount of music I have,
I was gonna say,
learn, it's like, it's so much music, and it's like, and he's such a wild composer too. I mean, it's like, he's just amazing. It's exhilarating to be able to work with him, and I'm learning so much, but
congratulations.
Scary. Thank you.
It's here you go again, right? Always pushing the envelope, forever the student and the instructor at the same time, right? So is this going to be like a live event that people can buy tickets and see you do?
Yeah, it's like with the Utah Symphony. So like go to Salt Lake City and
go
buy, you know. Actually, I have some, like, I think I have some friends who've bought tickets, so they're making a trip out, and there's also going to be some smaller performances like at a couple of venues around there. So there'll be, you know, the big concerto, but then we're doing also smaller things. That's kind of like this ensemble that includes, you know, Stephen Mackey and David Robertson, who's both a guitar player, but also a really renowned conductor. And he was the one who pitched this idea to the Utah Symphony. But I get to play with just these insane musicians, not just in the symphony, but also in this smaller ensemble that we developed over the pandemic called Another Night on Earth. And that's with, you know, classical guitar players like, you know, Gigi and Heiko, and then Joe Gore plays with us. Daniele, my husband, who's an amazing guitarist and composer too. So
yes, he is.
We're just, I'm just trying to figure out how few other things I can take on so that this concerto.
You're going to have to move some things around.
Right, exactly.
You do so much, because my mind went, okay, so she wanted to create a new album and write a book, and she's performing with Zepparella, and oh wait, and now she's doing this concerto. Okay. Which we discussed off before we went live, is that's why you most likely won't be at NAMM or the She Rocks in 2024, because it's a really big deal. I'm really happy for you.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, it is hard, you know, because I love to say yes to things. I love to go to the She Rocks. I'd love to go and see, you know, my friends and, you know, people I love in the industry at NAMM, but you do see some of these opportunities. And if this were something that was very easily within my wheelhouse, I wouldn't have to do it. But the whole learning opportunity comes by getting your butt kicked and having to make some sacrifices in order to get to be at a level where I could possibly not humiliate myself and everybody else in the room.
I highly doubt that would happen, but it's good to stay humble. I love that you have this humbleness about you. So then let us know currently, what is the gear you like working with currently when it comes to composing?
Oh, for composing. Okay. So it kind of depends. Right now, in all my free time, I'm also working on an MFA. So for like...
That's right. You're in school, of course.
Right. So for like film composition and orchestration, which is slightly different. When I do like my stuff for my albums, I work in a notation program called Sibelius. So it's like, you know, it looks like a regular musical score, but it's, you know, on my computer, and I can, you know, input notes and standard notation and then be able to hear things back in real time. But for school, they're much more focused on working in a DAW. So I'm working mostly in Logic with virtual instruments, sometimes with some live guitars that I can record. That always helps, I guess, with realism. So I'm learning more about working with virtual instruments too. And so that's in Logic. And I use like, you know, Spitfire's BBC Symphony Orchestra and some stuff by like I have Cinebrass and some Zebra stuff, but you know, that's all. I don't know how much anybody, you kind of have to be in that world. Like a year ago, I would have been like, what, you know? So, still learning about it myself, but it's interesting to learn about this other world of composition. And I feel like it's just making me giving me a broader set of skills.
Going right into we'll wrap this up in a couple of minutes. I wanted to know, what is your thought on AI in music? Because you talked about, doing what you do and learning how you learn, staying ahead of and learning new technologies, new programs is so essential. But now with AI kind of in the forefront, what do you think are the pros and cons to that in music?
Well, I don't know enough about it to speak, with real intelligence or education on it. So with that as my disclaimer, I guess I would just say that there's probably going to be a place for it, but I don't see it. I don't see it replacing musicians much quicker than I would see it replacing other humans for friendship. We're humans. We're human inclined. We want to interact with humans. Like, even if there might be something fun about interacting with technology, I think we all very much felt it, especially over the pandemic of, even though Zoom and stuff like that made it easier to see people's faces as you were talking to them, there is something that's so much more vivid about interacting with other humans, actually in the real world in 3 dimensions, face to face. And I think that while there may be certain types of music that are written specifically to be musical wallpaper, and maybe AI can kind of jump in and do that stuff, that when you're really talking about getting attached to an artist, whether they be human or AI, I just think it's going to be, I just don't think that for me, I would want to stop listening to what humans have to say, even if AI did it really well. And even if there's some AI channel that makes stuff that I think is really beautiful, I think it's still going to be filtered like through me if I ever let it inspire something I write. So I would say on one hand, it's interesting, but I'm not like scared of it, I guess I would say.
That's a good way to put it. It's when I'm seeing articles or talking with folks on the different perspective between where it can take over in film and TV and then with music, I think there's room for it. It's no different than, because I know I'm old enough now to where every time music progressed from records to cassettes to digital to, what came back around again? Records, vinyl, right? I think you've hit that. It's like, I'm curious to know what they will use it for, but it can never replace authenticity and connection and inspiration that comes from a human being. So I think the only thing to look out for is learning laws and being tight with those that work in music law to know if there are things you need to put in place as you put music out, which Brianna, who's watching, knows all about. She's currently dealing with something herself. To make sure that there are laws in place so that you and your likeness and your music and your creativity can't be used without express permission that you didn't realize you gave unconsciously or without knowing, right? Like when we all sign up for Facebook without realizing it, Facebook can use whatever we post.
Right.
So then I think just to be cautious, but I'm curious. Cautious, but curious.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, on one hand, there's just no point in like being, in catastrophizing progress, because it's like, you're not going to stop it by being upset about it. It's just more like, what do you do with it? And if nothing else, it's like, well, this is interesting. It's not going to stop me from doing music, but at the same time, it's like, nope, you shouldn't get into music if you think it's a good financial decision. You should get into music because it's something you absolutely must do. And it's important enough to you to make the sacrifices you have to do it. So it's like, okay, there's plenty of places where really generic music is required. Great. Yeah. If that frees up artists to be a little bit more creative, I don't know if that's a bad thing. But on the other hand, I kind of
that's a good point.
What I liken it to a little bit is like, remember how even like, I don't know, a few years ago, everybody was so gung-ho about Instagram filters, and everybody thought that suddenly they were like, a great photographer because of Instagram filters. And now we look at those filters, we're like, oh my God, why were we filtering pictures so much? Like, and I almost feel like AI music's going to be like that. Like everybody's all excited about it, but it's like, you know, Annie Leibovitz still has a job, you know, it's like it's still, there's something that somebody who's really great at an art is kind of irreplaceable.
Agreed. And with wonderful folks like you, as an instructor, you know, you work in camps, you do your own instruction, you've got books. I think there's just room for everything. We just need to just be aware and be conscious of our efforts, right? And that's how I mean, especially the youth, because I'm Gen X and we've got, I don't even remember, is it Alpha? I don't know why we're calling it Alpha, but it's like Gen Alpha, I think, is the next generation of people. And it's just, you know, I've lived long enough now that I've seen the progression of technology. So I feel like I'm in this elder role, which I need to make sure that as I'm instructing, like working with Girls Rock Sacramento or wherever I'm speaking, that I'm bringing up things to kind of keep it in check, but then I'm learning from them as well. It's because it's inevitable. I tell people it's inevitable. We can fight it all we want, but it's inevitable.
Right. Well, and we can use it as a tool, right? I mean, it's like, I don't think it has to be, I mean, are people really like, you know, investing all of this time and energy in AI to be like, hey, screw humans. Let's, you know, it's not that. I think the idea is that it's there to provide a service for something. I'd really like AI that would do my taxes. I mean, like I would kind of vote. They do.
There's ChatGPT that, yes,
really?
They do your taxes. They can write dissertations for you. They can, it's all there.
See, like the dissertations, like it's like, well, then I'm not learning anything. So like, I still want to do that. But like, I kind of feel like the stuff that like, I'm like, look, I don't need to know this. Like, just tell me what I owe you at the end of the year. And I don't want to have to go through all my receipts, you know? But it's like,
especially in the line of work that you do.
Oh my God. But I feel like, you know, we can look at any potential, anything can be potentially good or bad, just about, right? So if we have this new tool, how do we use it wisely and creatively, you know, and maybe to, like I said, to alleviate some of our burden. Let's say a composer has to spend, you know, these aren't real numbers, but let's say half their time writing stuff that they don't really care about just to, you know, finish a commercial or something like that. Well, if AI plus a little bit of a human touch allows for a piece of music that sounds both kind of, you know, lukewarm enough that enough people are going to be like, that's fine, but then have a little bit of seasoning from humans. And then that enables the composer to go and write something that's, you know, marvelously expressive and creatively adventurous, then cool, right?
That's definitely a good way to look at it. I like that. Yeah. We're always learning. Gretchen, thank you so much for taking the time. I really look forward to all that you're doing. I put up your website, those that are watching, please. You can learn all her upcoming performances with Zepparella, her concerto in Utah in April, her new album coming out just whenever she's finishing her master's. Who knows? Like the next time we talk, is the only sad thing will be if I don't see you, which most likely we were not going to see at the She-Rock, because that's going to be a whole nother year before I think. Well, because that's like our musical reunion, right? But
I feel like
maybe I'll find a way out to Utah and I'll surprise you and go, yes, and there she is.
Oh my God, that would be amazing. And I feel like we get towards Sacramento, like we play in Roseville. That's not too far. You're always invited as our guest if you can make it.
Well, you were there. Thank you. And I couldn't do it. I had a conflict or I would have been there. You were so close to me. You were like 12 minutes away from me.
It's like everybody's busy. I totally get busy. I never begrudge anybody for busy.
Right. So then to remind everyone else who's watching too, because we do have our 12th annual She Rocks Awards coming up. Coming back to NAMM where it all began, January 25th, website right there, thewomen.com or sherocksawards.com. Tickets are on sale. Also, we are still accepting nominations. If you think of someone, a woman in the music industry, whether she plays an instrument in a band, she's a CEO of a company, she's a sound engineer, send your nominations our way. You've got till the 30th of this month. So again, thank you, Gretchen. I wish you all the best. I'm going to surprise you at some point. I'm sure come out and see you at a show.
Oh, I would love to see you. Any excuse, like I said.
And thank you everybody who watched. And again, She Rocks Awards, January 25th, 2024. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.